I'm Derek Eyring. I've been in the real estate business for over 3 decades. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I'm always paying attention to real estate trends, industry innovators, and business influencers.
I'm Alan Smith. For over 25 years, I've helped buyers and sellers with their real estate needs. Join us on this podcast. Let's talk about strategies to help you play this real estate game to win.
Join us as we search out the latest trends, hot topics, red flags, and deal breakers in every episode of Market Movers. So I was wearing an eye patch at the time because I thought it looked cool. I didn't really need it.
Yeah.
And then when the officer asked if he could search my car, I smugly told him, I probably have to be under arrest for you to search my car.
Okay.
So on the way to jail in the cop car, are we on camera? Oh, jeez.
Oh yeah, we should talk business.
You should probably tell us when we're on camera. Oh,
Yeah.
jeez. All right, let's get going with this. Market Movers number
Trace.
Wow.
Trace.
3 in a row.
3 in a row. How about that?
I haven't done 3 in a row of anything in years.
I don't barely take 3 steps in a row these days. But yeah, no, this will be good. We want to talk about some market conditions and some general tips, I think, for both consumers and brokers out there, just to kind of stay out of the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, as you may know. But before we get to that, we're starting a new section, a new addition to our podcast. Let's take that over. Before we get to that, though, we're starting a new addition to our podcast. It's Look Who Stopped By Today.
Yeah, a special guest flown in at great expense.
Yes, better call Carl.
Carl's
Hey,
here.
Carl.
Hey,
Nice
welcome.
to see you. So let's tell the story about Carl. And maybe
So,
you get started.
what was it, a month or two ago? We're randomly here having our office meeting, and Carl stops by during our meeting and introduced himself, a local contractor in the area, right? And joined our meeting and started volunteering information and stuff. And before he was done, he had emailed us all some tips on social media and stuff, and it was great. So it's good to see people that are out actually working, returning phone calls, imagine that, and making a difference. So
Right, and it was almost serendipity because the topic of the day was, hey, get outside of your comfort zone, right?
Yep.
And you got to get out and talk to people, and you have to make yourself known
Yes.
that you're active in your business, right? And in walks Carl.
Yeah.
He has coffee.
I
got-
forgot about the coffee. You're right.
He's got his gear on. And he sits down with us and attends the meeting, has some good points, and then at the end of the meeting, guess what he does? And we'll have our producer throw that up in this podcast. He takes a picture of the entire office and himself,
Right.
and says, "Hey, I'm stopping by the John L. Scott office. I do bathroom, kitchen remodels, that sort of thing." And he also took us up on our offer to go to an event. And he was the only one of us that actually showed up at the event. And then I see him on in social media posting at the event. And
Yeah.
he actually
Yeah.
won a door prize, right?
I did.
Yeah.
What did you win?
It was like a $100 reward for some cleaning service.
That's great.
That's nice. Yeah.
That's great. So
That's great.
Carl's the guy. So tell us a little bit about your business and your story.
Got you. Well, in August of last year, my wife got stationed here at JBLM because she's in the Army. And, we came up here and I ended up adding a bathroom to our home. And at that moment, it was like we ended up getting confirmation that, you know what, Carlos, you should start in construction because people need you. And we prayed about it. We got confirmation, and I just took a leap of faith and started opening the business in January and been at it since then.
And you moved here from Florida, right?
I did.
Yeah.
From
Just-
Miami.
Not just across town. That's a little bit of a move.
Well,
So
high five,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Awesome story. Thanks
Yeah.
for always
Well
coming
done.
by, being positive.
yeah.
Showing everyone how to do it, which is just to get out there and just make it happen, right?
Get out
That's
there
what
and
you're
make a
doing.
difference. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Good seeing you again. Yeah, you bet.
Let's
Thanks.
go.
You bet.
All right, right on. All right, Al. So what's going on in this real estate market right now? What do we want to talk about today?
Well, we have some new changes. If you're in the Puget Sound area, our local multiple listing service has revised some of our forms. Imagine
Oh,
that.
wow, that's just so exciting.
Yeah. So
Every time there's a new forms change at the meetings, people are clamoring for this
we can't keep them
information.
away.
We can't keep them away. We're trying to beat them. There's a line around the block.
Line around a block. Please tell us about the new contract changes. So basically, this all centers around a skill set that if you haven't developed yet, you're going to need to develop very, very soon, if not yesterday, and that you're going to have to be prepared to talk about compensation and how you expect to be compensated for your time and effort in helping people buy or sell a home, either way. And what the options are for sellers, what the options are for buyers. You're going to need to be prepared to have those conversations and just kind of get used to it. So the forms changes are kind of reflecting that. It's a lot more open, a lot more transparent, a lot more detailed. It's all right there in black and white for everybody.
There you go. So let's flip this over a little bit. If you are a buyer, what can you expect to hear from your chosen broker?
Well, the broker is going to have a discussion about how they expect to be paid. The buyers are ultimately responsible for paying the brokerage firm.
And that's new, right?
It's been around for a while.
Okay.
We've been way ahead of the game compared to other places in the nation. But yes, so the buyers are ultimately responsible for that. But buyers can also select and accept any offer of compensation a seller might be making if they're offering to pay somebody to help find the buyer for their home. So there's some twists and some turns to that a little bit, but that conversation is going to have to take place in addition to real estate brokers being required to have a written, signed service agreement with the buyer before they ever show them a house. So that's kind of new to a lot of real estate brokers, not to all, because some brokers have always done that. But it's just the lay of the land is a little bit different now.
And I think we're getting a lot of buyers going, "Oh, I've never had any of those conversations."
Mm-hmm.
What would we say to
it's
that?
interesting that this law took effect in Washington State on January 1st of this year. Here we are now towards the end of July. And I still talk to buyers who have maybe looked at a house with another broker in the past couple of months and were never asked to sign anything. So
Right.
there are people out there that are either ignorant of law changes, which is probably not something you want in a real estate broker, be my guess.
I mean, if we're being honest,
Yeah,
right?
or they just don't care. They don't
Yeah.
think the rules apply to them, and so either way, that would scare me if I'm buying a property and I have a representation from somebody that kind of takes that approach. So it's the new rules, and so you can play by the rules.
That's right. That's right. We got to play by the rules.
Yep.
And as a seller, I'm getting a lot of questions. Do I need to offer? Do I have to pay the buyer's broker a fee?
Yeah, and like we talked about in a previous podcast, they've never had to pay. That's never been a requirement. But it's kind of common sense that if you're putting your home on the market and you're looking at all your competition in the area, and they're all offering, X percentage or X plus Y or whatever it happens to be, if you don't offer some kind of compensation, well, human nature being what it is, your property is probably going to be ignored a little bit. And so it's completely up to the seller. But one of the decisions that the seller needs to make is how competitive they really want to be on the marketplace, given the dynamics of the market right now.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think we talked about this before as well. I would just not imagine putting my house on the market without offering compensation. That's just me though. Some people want to see what comes in and see what happens. And there's an option for that now as well, right?
Yeah, in fact, one of the interesting numbers that came about in a recent National Association of Realtors report on buyers and sellers is that 89%, I think it's 89% of buyers are working with a broker. And so if a broker is going to ignore your property, and 89% of the buyers are all working with brokers, well, you're limiting your buyer pool quite a bit. And so it's just common sense. And it's something where we need to find common ground with our clients, whether they're the buyer or the seller. We need to find some common ground and just have a conversation. Here's what's going on. It's
Yeah.
not about trying to trick people into signing something or none of that. It's just about here's what's going on. Here's how I like to approach it. What are your thoughts? And ultimately, it's up to the clients to decide, what they want to do. But having those conversations,
Yeah.
they're needed. So,
Yeah, on the broker side, finding common ground, it's easy if it's by referral, and so either the buyer or the seller, they were referred to you. They know they were friends of friends, and that makes it a little easier to quickly kind of get to some common ground. But I think it's important on the broker side to have conversations with our brokers about the necessity when you meet your client for the first time. We're the last of these businesses that we meet clients at their homes, and it might be the very first time that we meet them.
right.
Remember the Avon lady
Yeah.
come to your
Yes, I do.
house?
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like the Avon
What
lady,
was it?
Alan,
Was it
and that's not a good look.
Wild Country Cologne? I think
Yeah,
was
yeah.
in the little
The
Irish
log
setter.
cabin.
Yeah, the log cabin. Yeah.
Or the log truck.
Yeah.
Cologne. Sorry, we're getting off on it.
Ultimately, I think, especially for example, if you mentioned sitting in their home, if you're on a listing appointment and you're talking to them about the services that you're going to render and they want to get their home sold, really finding common ground means what do they need to get accomplished in their life? What are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to get moved by a certain time frame? Are they more concerned about the timing of everything? Are they more concerned about the finances involved on everything? But having open and honest conversations is more important now than it's ever been. And there's no tricky dialogue. The best dialogue is the truth. And what they're
Right.
really hiring us for is to handle the process, take care of all the little details so they can think about the other things that are important to them in their life, and to just be honest with people.
Right.
And if you can do those things, you do well in this career.
And it's one thing, to have the technical ability to present your marketing material. I remember as a new broker, that's all that I was interested in. Is I started with Windermere. I did the Pro Start back in the day, which is kind of an old version of what we do now when we train brokers to talk about our marketing materials and our listing presentation. And so I spent all this time, gearing up for that. So when I'd meet the clients, it'd be ready, set, go right into my presentation, right?
Right, right.
And spend no time doing all the things you just talked about, right? So it's very important to flip that around. And it was only when I forgot to put my presentation in the car and I showed up without it and I just had a normal conversation with my folks that I got my first listing.
Oh, there you go.
Because I was like, I'm really sorry. Now it's time for me to do my thing and I don't have it. So
Watch me dance. Here
here
I
we
go.
have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
And they were like, because we had chatted so long, we built rapport. And they were like, oh, you got the listing. Just come back with the paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't even. So then the light took me. I'm slow. Clearly, you guys have seen the podcast. I'm a little slow. Took me a while to get that right. Like,
Sure.
I need to really find common ground and really figure out what everyone's goals are. Then we can move on to conversation about marketing and
Yeah, marketing and pricing, all those things are really important, but really it's the motivation of the seller and what they're trying to get accomplished in their life that we need to be sensitive to. Which, you said something that made me think for a second. So what are some of the advantages you think to having someone hire a realtor? Hire a real estate broker. What, can I just do this on my own? I mean, I'm a good salesperson. I can sell my
Right.
house, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think are some of the top reasons why somebody should consider working with a broker?
Yeah, there's a handful of them. And the first one is just expertise of the market, right? So when we talk to new brokers, especially new brokers that are new to the area, what do we always tell them, Alan?
Well, we also get out there and learn the market, learn what's going on in your neighborhood, and then expand it from there.
Yeah. So if you can't overcome objections as far as, being in the area for 30 years and knowing every nook and cranny, you can overcome them with just market knowledge of the inventory, what's new, what's pending, what got a price change today. I mean, to the point where you can, if somebody walks into your open house, you can say, I know exactly what you're looking for. I just saw it yesterday. It's down the street. It's a 3-bedroom Rambler. It has the great wood panel walls that you're looking for, whatever the case may be, right?
Right.
If you can, by memory, say, here's what's going on in the marketplace, people automatically identify you as somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, nobody ever complains you have too much market knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what we're supposed to have, right?
Yeah.
So,
What would you think some of
well,
the
and
other
then
ones are?
also you have the networking aspect of it also, where,
Yeah.
you know, if you hire somebody to do this thing for you, they know people.
Yeah.
And they're going to be in more conversations about helping you, if you're selling a home, help you sell the home. They have their radar up. They know people. They know if you're buying a home, they might know of something that they've talked about putting on the market. So just having somebody that networks in that area and knows other people that are helping buyers and sellers can kind of expand your reach. When you know somebody on the other side of the transaction, for good or bad, you know, whether you can trust them or not, or whether or not, you know, they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And those relationships are critical, especially if somebody's out buying a home. Having a great lender is
Sure.
one of the most important things you can do. And you may not know any lenders on your own, right?
Right.
So,
right.
but a good real estate broker has a handful of people they've used that are really good at what they do, and they can at least, hey, go talk to these people and pick one. You know, here's somebody who's really good at this. So let's start off on the right foot, and so those kind of relationships are huge.
Yeah, I think the networking part is a little underrated, really. People don't think about that until they really kind of are in the middle of something
Right.
like that, where, hey, I know this broker, we can get this together. I think we have a good advantage because we've done transactions together and we have a smooth working relationship. I think that's important. And that's just human nature, right?
Sure.
To work with people that you like to work with. So, our goal as brokers is to be one of those people. Yeah.
Right. And then there's also the negotiating skill aspect of the whole thing. Sometimes, you know a lot. If you're selling a house, you know a lot about your house, but can you sell it?
Right.
You know, in a way that makes it appealing to a buyer. I mean, maybe that's not your forte. You know, so having somebody, and sometimes it's good to have some distance. To have somebody representing you in your best interest that can say, well, no, we're not going to do that. Because then this will happen, right?
Yeah,
So-
negotiating is number one. If you do any kind of poll with buyers or sellers, number one reason they hire a realtor.
Yeah, and handle all the paperwork and all the legalities of, most of our paperwork tends to favor the buyer in a lot of ways, but there are some areas that benefit the seller too. So do you know all of those? And if not, don't worry about it. Hire somebody who does, that can watch out for you in your best interest. That's, I always jokingly tell people, part of what I'm paid for is to make sure that certain things don't happen. And
sure.
those are the things you're never going to see.
Right.
They don't necessarily have a tangible feel to them, but it's still important.
Yeah, it is no coincidence if your real estate transaction goes very smoothly. It's not an accident, right? Or your agent didn't just do nothing.
Yeah.
If it goes very smoothly, that means it's your duck on the water analogy.
Yeah, the example, and I don't know if we've even said that on a podcast before, but I always use the example of, you get up, you're on a little vacation cabin up on a lake in the mountains, and you wake up one morning and you can hear the crickets and it's nice and quiet, and you look out on the lake and there's a duck. And a duck is floating across the lake. It's going from one side of the lake to the other side of the lake. And the mist is coming up, and you see the duck. You see the duck floating smoothly on the water. What you don't see is the duck's feet moving, a mile a minute underneath the surface to make it happen. And so the interesting thing about this profession is the better you get at it and the better you get at anticipating upcoming events, the easier it looks to the rest of the world, because
Right.
you don't get flapped up about every little thing. You can anticipate what's around the corner, and you can kind of head that off at the pass. But you just go through the day less frantic and with no drama. And so it tends to make it look like, wow, what he does is really easy, man. I sure could do that.
Right.
Look how much
Sign just
money they
went
made,
up,
right?
and then yeah.
Yeah. But in reality, that's what you want to see. You want to see no drama. You want to see it's supposed to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride. There'll be some tense moments, but it should be a fun roller coaster ride, not a terrifying roller coaster ride. And a lot of times, I think brokers get in their own way. They like to kick over the hornet's nest every now and then to have the bees all start circling so they can get rid of the bees and feel like they did something.
Yeah, or just a common mistake that a lot of brokers make, and me included back in the day when I was kind of getting going, is to kind of create sort of a, not on purpose, but an adversarial. If the other broker does something that isn't quite, up to snuff, in relating that to your client, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden everyone, it's us against them.
Yeah, everybody's all bunched up. Yep.
I learned a long time ago that that's not anywhere we want to go.
Right.
We want smooth, transparent, easygoing transaction, which means good relationships with the other side. If they stumble a little bit, I'm not going to convey that to my clients unless I need to.
Right.
If it's really important to the transaction, as far as we need to work through something. But if it's just the day to day, nobody wants to know how the sausage is made.
Correct. And so, yeah, and I always tell people too, the broker that you bark at today is the one you're going to need a favor from tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
always remember that too.
Yeah, and I generally find that my peers out there in the real estate world are really great to work with, and there are we're people, right?
Right.
So we all have bad days and good days, and but in general, we all have the same goal. We want the transaction to come to a nice ending for both of our clients.
And everybody's happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other side too, if you're buying a property, maybe you're new to the area, right?
Right.
You're just coming into this town. You don't know anything about the town. A good real estate broker is involved in their community.
Right.
They know,
Back
okay,
to the networking.
hey,
Yeah.
there's a great restaurant around the corner here,
Yeah.
or can you walk to the coffee shop? Where's the local shopping? Where are the schools? Where are all the parks? Are you dog people? Okay, there's a great dog park over here. That can be worth a small fortune. Just in having somebody that can kind of say, hey, over here, there's a great lake over there. You don't have to kind of figure that out on your own too.
Right.
So.
That and getting the homie hookup with your contractors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Carl.
Guys like Carl that that, of course, we have lots of contractors on our vendor list, and I always tell my folks, they've done really good things for us in the past, but we never know going forward. But we hope that you have a great experience with them. But people are looking for that, right? I'm always looking for, hey, do you know a plumber? Do you know an electrician? Do you know somebody that can do this? And so if we're that resource, that's even better. So buyers and sellers can have their brokers as a resource for that. It just makes the transaction more of a white glove experience,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's almost like if you're doing this and you're serious about doing this for a living, you should really consider yourself like you're running for office. You're running to be the mayor of the town,
Yeah.
And if you're burning bridges every time you turn around, well, guess what? You're not going to get elected.
Yeah.
So if you just treat everybody that you meet in the transaction with that thought in mind, it's not going to hurt your career at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how people ultimately want to be treated anyway. Just honesty is usually the best script.
Yeah, absolutely. And so some other reasons that people might hire a realtor, is all marketing the same? Because I think that people, of course, want to hire a realtor for their marketing.
So marketing mean like I can take pictures of the house with my phone?
I mean, if you want to,
and post it on MySpace.
Yeah. MySpace. Do I still have a MySpace? Is it still out there?
I don't. It probably is. I don't know.
Dude, I should pull up my old MySpace.
The other day, I saw a picture of a house, the front picture of the house on the listing, and I know the real estate agent took their picture of the front of the house using their phone, because the sun was behind them and their shadow was on the front lawn holding up their phone. So, folks,
Only to be upstaged by the mirror from their car because they didn't even get out of the car. Sorry, I
folks,
interrupted you there.
we could do better than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but one of the things that you're hiring a broker for is their marketing expertise. And it's how are we going to get this property under as many buyers' noses as possible? How do we do that? And, that's what you're hiring a great broker to do too. It's marketing and sales is what it is. It's showing the property right and getting people excited about the property and all the things that the property offers. And how do we ultimately market this so that more and more people can see it?
Yeah, and you kind of lead me to something that you've been talking about a little bit, and I think it's good for other brokers to hear. When you're on a listing appointment and folks ask you, should I do the X, Y, and Z? Now, in the past, as a newer agent or whatever, just learning, right? I would say, oh, I don't, because I didn't want to offend them, right?
Right,
I
right.
don't know. Maybe it looks fine. I
It
think
looks okay.
looks
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So what's the answer? What should it be though?
When somebody asks you, do you think we should paint this wall? What they're really probably thinking is we probably need to paint this wall.
Yeah.
And they're looking for confirmation. Now, if they want to paint the wall because they themselves have just grown tired of this color, that's one thing. And I would say, nah, don't spend the time doing it. But for the most part, the answer to that should be, I would. Because they're already thinking this paint color is not going to work. It's too garish. It's too, nobody wants pictures of great white sharks all over the wall or whatever it happens to be.
Some
right?
people do.
Should we pull the Harley blanket down from the front window? Yes, I probably would. So, most of the time, again, be honest with people. Yes,
Right.
you know what? Here's a thought. Let's empty the litter box once in a while and we'll make this property more appealing. So you just have to be honest with people.
that
And,
one, Al.
and most of the times, we got to fix the holes in the wall or where the dog has chewed up the carpet at the door threshold or something. Those are projects that a buyer is going to look at. And whenever a buyer looks at a project, it's always more expensive than it really will be. Because
Yeah.
in their mind, it gets blown out of proportion. So, a couple $1,000s worth of carpet becomes a $15,000 estimate in their mind.
Right.
And that's not what you want people experiencing when they're coming through your home. We want them mentally moving into the home and picturing themselves living there. And so we've got to get some of those obvious obstacles out of the way.
Yeah, and but I'm glad that you talk about this because I think it gives us sort of an opening, and to be more candid with our clients. And we're all a little sheepish about that, but we're here to help them get their home sold. So we need to be candid when we have to be, right?
That's how you build trust, and ultimately you build that relationship. Because my goal is really simple. When I am helping somebody, whether they're buying or selling real estate, my goal is simple. I want every single real estate transaction they're ever going to do for the rest of their lives. And the only way I'm going to get that is if I treat them well every time they interact with me, if I help them accomplish what they want to accomplish, and I do it in a way that they enjoy hanging out with me for a while.
Yeah.
So it's about building that trust, and that's earned through actions, not just talking the talk. You got to
Right.
walk the walk as well.
Yeah.
And so if you're new to this profession, I would encourage you become a student of your profession. Learn things. Learn how to market well. Go look at some other websites of some other industries and say, wow, they really capture the imagination when they do this kind of thing. How can you implement that in your business? Take advantage of seasoned professionals that you might have in your office. And if you don't have any seasoned professionals in your office, go find an office that has seasoned professionals.
Right.
But learn
Makes
from
sense.
the best.
Yeah.
And try to pattern what they do and help learn from their mistakes as well too. And your clients will appreciate that.
Yeah. So, and one of the other things that people hire the realtors to do is handle the paperwork, right?
Handle the paperwork.
And
Yep.
there's more of it than ever. We just went
What's the
through-
average offer now? 15 to 20 pages, probably.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
That's without
So-
disclosures and everything
right,
else.
Right.
Get into disclosures and all that stuff.
Yep.
It's 40 or 50 pages.
Well, we were talking about some new forms changes today in our office meeting, and the point you made to the group is like, hey, look, you're supposed to know this stuff. That's your job. It's not the consumer's job to keep up on all these forms changes. It benefits them, or it puts them in a precarious position. Which is it? It's our job to know these things.
Right.
And so, take that part of the profession seriously too. Become a student
Yeah.
of the forms as well.
So you got to know the forms to know the timelines, and the timelines are what will get you hung up and your clients hung out to dry.
Right.
Especially things like inspection
Oh, yeah.
contingencies,
Yep.
financing contingencies, deadlines of all kinds. If you're not tracking your deadlines, then you can get yourself and your clients in a lot of trouble. So you got to make sure that you know your paperwork inside and out, and it's always changing. So that means you have to stay engaged in your business,
Right.
right?
Yep.
That's important. You have to come, show up, be engaged, know what's happening, read all the stuff that you get, because we get tons of information every day,
Right.
don't we, Al? And then,
Well, it's kind of like if you don't know your paperwork, these are the tools of your trade, right? I had, I had a roofer one time ask me if I had a hammer he could borrow.
too
And
bad it was on your own house.
it was on my own house, and he was just one of the many crew guys,
Right.
and he was a newer guy that showed up that day that I hadn't seen the previous day, and I kept thinking to myself, "You're a roofer, but you didn't bring a hammer."
Yeah.
So, so needless to say, he was not on the job very long because the owner of the company happened to come by at the same time and said, "Get down off that roof."
Yeah. And here's a good point to that, though. He could be possibly, you never know, the best roofer in Washington State.
Right,
And he just forgot his hammer.
right,
Right.
right.
But once he comes to you asking, do you have a hammer I can borrow?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter anymore how
Doesn't
good he
matter.
is. You've
Right.
lost all your confidence in this guy,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of folks without a hammer,
right.
and they're probably really good, but they're just not articulating,
Yeah,
and they're not prepared. You got to be prepared. So, that's what we're here to kind of remind ourselves.
right.
I mean, most of this is just for us to remind ourselves this is how we need to do our
These are,
business, right?
these are all good stories. Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
what about? So, do you have any great real estate stories?
Well, I have a lot, but I think we were going to talk a little bit about a couple, just to tell each other, remind ourselves of a couple of real estate nightmare stories.
Yeah. So, I've had showings where the showing appointment, there was somebody in the house that wasn't supposed to be in the house.
Yeah.
That was fun. I've had situations where you walk in and people are sleeping in the bed.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
forgot that you
That's
had an
always fun.
appointment.
Yeah.
Oh, hi there. So,
Well, hello.
yeah, hello. So those stories come about really well. I remember a lot of those.
Yeah.
But the main horror stories are usually paperwork based. That's
Yeah.
usually, I didn't realize I had to deposit the earnest money in this time frame, right?
Right.
Because when you do that, you give the seller the opportunity to pull the plug on the transaction, and a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
And so they think, that's just a rule. I'll do it a day later, And no, you need to follow. You need to follow the terms and the conditions of the paperwork.
Yeah.
And so usually those are the nightmares that take place. But I know you had one
Yeah.
a while back, not you personally, but in one of our offices with legal descriptions.
Yeah, so things you can even be more nuanced than that. It's like, oh yeah, basic paperwork and deadlines and all that, but also just real estate transactions are complex and they're complicated. We had a deal, two deals really, so many years back now, where our agent represented two sets of buyers that bought side by side investment properties. Down in the Olympia area. And they were listed both by one broker out of area. And the broker, of course, had this normal listing. We wrote it up. And so folks that don't know, the way we write up our listings, it's all, you can pull up the actual property and then basically click a button and it'll auto populate some of the form, address, parcel number, all that stuff, right?
Right.
So they just did what they do, right? They wrote the offer up, it auto-populated some of that stuff, they filled in the rest, sent the offers off, they got accepted, they closed, everyone went down the road. This was before the big recession of 08, 9, 10, whatever,
Right.
however many years.
So these were two different buyers.
Two different
that
buyers.
bought two different properties that were
Side
by
by
side.
side.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. Listed by the same broker.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So several years later, unfortunately, one of the buyers went into default because we were in the middle of a recession.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly common. A lot of people defaulted on their mortgages. Guess what happened? One day the bank comes knocking on the door. It's the other house. So we get a phone call where like, the bank is here to foreclose on our house. We pay our mortgage payments every month. What's going on? Long story short, the legal descriptions were mixed up in the listings, and the parcel numbers were mixed up in the listings. Title didn't catch it. We didn't catch it. Our brokers didn't catch it. Closes, and we have people living in houses that aren't legally described to them.
Wow.
So I bought the house, but I bought the wrong legal description, which means I bought the other house.
You really bought the other house, right?
Yeah. So that was my biggest real estate nightmare as a broker, is to try to untangle that. Of course, it took a while, but it did get resolved. We got the things switched up, but it took some time and some lawyers.
Yeah.
Two things that you don't want
Right. No.
to spend.
Yeah, exactly.
Time and
You
time
said-
with
yeah.
sorry lawyers. Time with lawyers. Nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, lawyers are great. They do a great thing for when you need them. You need them.
Right.
But I try to avoid spending any time with lawyers
There you go.
unless they're just friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly right. So
that's where we're at.
So we've got, so those are great stories. I remember one, I had clients, they purchased a duplex, and they lived in one side and they rented out the other side to tenants, right? And all of a sudden one day, the power company shows off and turns off their power. It turns out that the tenants had not been paying their utility bills, and the meters were reversed on the duplex. And
Oh,
nobody
geez.
ever picked up on it, because up until this tenant, everybody had been paying their power bills every month like normal, right? Well, this tenant stopped. So when the power company showed up, they switched off the power to my clients. And,
nice.
and that's only then did they realize, wait a minute, these meters have been reversed since the day the builder built the
Oh,
duplex.
yeah, see.
So
Yeah.
some like
Yeah.
that can happen, but
And some of these things we can mitigate with time and experience. Like I've since then always checked my legal descriptions
make
and
sure,
my
yeah.
parcel numbers and make sure that they were correct. But some things are unavoidable. But a lot of this comes down to just good training, right?
Yep.
And good involvement in your business on a day-to-day basis.
Well, we want to make sure, and new broker starts with us, we always start with pretty intensive focus on the paperwork, because if you understand the paperwork, you use the same basic forms every single time. And so if you can learn those forms cold, it gives you competence, right? From when you're out there doing things, and that competence breeds confidence.
Right.
So if you know, even if you're new to this business, if you know in your heart that you know that paperwork better than anybody else, then that gives you a sense of confidence. They'd be crazy not to use me because I know this paperwork really well. So that's a great place to start. If you're not in one of our offices, just start there. Take it upon yourself. Don't wait for Fred down the hall to come talk to you about the financing addendum. Learn it. There's in our multiple, there are manuals for every form. You can click on a button and you can read what the thought is behind this form. So learn that paperwork. If do nothing else, learn the paperwork as fast as you can, as deep as you can, and then get out there and go look at houses.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more things that why people hire agents. I would say that having some knowledge of the financing programs out there is good. We don't generally want to get in the weeds with our clients about their personal finances,
Right.
but we should know what the programs are that are working today, right?
Yeah, everything is obviously in the financing world is really based on credit score, and I don't know the credit score of my clients. I don't really need to know their credit score to do my job.
Yeah.
But what I do want to make sure is that they're in the hands of a good local lender, somebody that understands loan programs that are available to them, and somebody that is going to walk with us through the entire transaction. And I'm not going to have to now talk to Sally when I was talking to Bob last week, because now Sally has the file, or a 1-800 House of Loans kind of thing, where you don't know who's representing the buyer and who's
Right.
handling the file, and they're not going to talk to you anyway. So I always try to make sure that my buyers are in the good hands of a great lender that's local, that knows the market, and has lots of different loan programs that they can choose from to help fit the needs of the buyer the best.
Yeah, very important. And I just walked through this process with a buyer, and my buyer was making a purchase, very competitive property, and we had to kind of re-strategize. My buyer was with a lender that wasn't very responsive, wasn't local, so we got them to a local lender. We had to kind of talk about things like earnest money, how much to offer and that sort of thing, and all these little things add up to what made a difference for my buyer. They got the property. If we hadn't have pivoted, if we hadn't gotten a local lender, we wouldn't have had the earnest money talk and beefed up that earnest money amount. I don't think they would have. Well, I know they would not have gotten the property. So it is important. It's not just us trying to control the transaction. We're trying to control the outcome, which is positive for our clients, right?
Yeah, and on the listing side too, when I get an offer on one of my listings, one of the first conversations I'm going to have is with the person that wrote that approval letter. I want to find out how on the ball the lender is. Yes, you can look them up on the state website, and you can find out how long they've been licensed and how many different companies they've been with during their career. But I want to know how far they've gone down the path with the buyer in terms of approving them for real, because there's so many automated programs these days. It's easy for a lender to push a button. Yeah, okay, you fogged the mirror, you're good. You should be good for up to 750. And they haven't really done any work on the file. That transaction is going to derail in about the third week. And I want to find out now before we accept an offer from somebody that can't close. So I always look to see who the lender is, as well as who the other broker is, and what does this picture really look like.
Right.
And so sometimes you put on your Columbo hat, although I guess he probably didn't really even wear a hat, but you put on your Columbo hat and you ask some questions, and that way I can talk to my seller with like I know something. Okay, here's what I was told. I talked to their lender. I was told this and this and this. I think we're looking good here.
And that's what they hire us for, right?
Yeah.
And so we make those phone calls, and after a while, we can see it coming, right?
Sure.
I mean, I kind of have some red flags when I know that something doesn't seem right. It is very apparent nowadays. Every once in a while, something new slips by us. Lately, it's been sourcing down payment funds.
Yes.
Which is an old story, but a new story, because the loan approval letters are kind of tricky. When you read them, it looks like, gosh, they've done everything. But then when you make the phone call, it's like, have you sourced the down payment? Oh, no, they just told me they have $50,000 to put down.
Right.
And it turns out it's a promise from Aunt Mabel, who, sometimes they get along and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. And now Aunt Mabel has changed her mind, and she's going to leave all her money to her cats.
Yeah.
And so, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's a real thing.
it's a real thing. You have one bad Thanksgiving dinner, and all of a sudden, mom and dad aren't loaning you that money anymore, right? But here's another thing about gift funds. If we're just mentioning gift funds, they have to be sourced. And so the lenders need to know about that. You may have a conversation when you're out showing houses with the buyer that, mom and dad are giving us money for the down payment. Does the lender know that? Because they may not have thought about that when they were talking to the lender. So you need to get the lender in the loop throughout the whole transaction to have a smooth transaction. So the more that you can investigate that, I have a saying, inspect what you expect. Just ask the questions, get the answers, so then you can tell your clients, okay, here's what I was told. What would you like to do? Here are our options. And that way I feel good about me representing them.
Yeah, and we're only as good as the information we're provided, but the lender's job is to go and source and verify that information. We just had a deal almost go sideways because the buyer never told the lender that they're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
So surprise right before closing. Oh,
Oh,
what do we do now?
now we wait. Now we
We
wait.
hope that the other
Yeah.
side cooperates, right?
Right.
Which in that case they did.
Yeah.
But good to know up front.
Here's another reason why you want to ask questions. I'll give you some stats here, some national stats. I pulled
Yeah,
up
yeah. And we'll
a
have
chart
Riley
here.
throw this up on the screen too.
Yeah, we'll throw these up on the screen so you don't have to try to remember them. But 27%. Now we're talking about the National Association of Realtors, all the members around in North America, in the United States. This is the United States. 27% of all the members started after 2020.
Okay.
So have been in the business. A full quarter of all the realtors in the United States have been in the business 4 years or less.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Which
that's
is great.
something to think
great.
about. Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
need young blood in the business.
Yeah.
But they may not have developed the knowledge yet to get through the transaction as smoothly, right? So there's something. The average realtor has 11 years of experience, which
Okay.
means that the rest of the pool has been around for a little while. 81% of real estate firms in the country are just one office firms. So we tend to think of these big giant companies.
The mega
the
brokerages.
the mega brokerages. And really, that's not the lay of the land. The lay of the land is that 81% are one office firms. And then the typical firm, believe it or not, only has 3 full-time licensees.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that stat breaks down, but I think that's very telling. There's a lot of people that like to get into real estate,
Right.
and they may just do it as a hobby.
Right.
And so
Good questions
you
to
know.
talk about or to think about when you're interviewing your real estate broker. And hey, new brokers can be great as far as powerhouses.
Yeah.
So don't exclude a new broker if they're less than 4 years in your interview process. That might be the person that I want to hire.
You may want that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
If they know their paperwork and they're all excited about getting you in houses, one of the challenges that grizzled old veterans like ourselves have is
Stop it now.
getting the enthusiasm to get up and go show another house, right? So there's a lot of advantages to being new in this business. And let's face it, new people coming into this business are bringing a whole new skill set with them. They're probably really good at social media. They're probably really good at computer skills. They're probably really good at all these things that some old dogs struggle with, right? So I wouldn't hesitate to hire somebody that's new as long as I knew they knew what they were doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I guess I was just saying that because this is no diss on people getting into the business, and across the board, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and you just have to interview people, and based on the results that they've gotten in the time they've been in, or their enthusiasm, or your rapport, make your decision, right?
Yeah, and part of working with a great agent, they'll know the market dynamics. So, for example, is this a buyer's market? Is this a seller's market? Can I ask for the moon with this offer? Can I ask them to leave the dog? Can I do all these things, or am I likely going to get shot down because there's competing offers? Right. As an example, right now, this national numbers here, home sales in the nation in 1995 were 3.85 million.
Okay.
In last year, there were 4 million. 3.85 to 4 million, but our population went from 266 million to 336 million.
Yeah, so that's not a big enough change.
That's not a big change.
Why do you think that is, Al?
Because inventory.
Yes.
Inventory is down. Inventory, believe it or not, in December of 1995 was 1.58 million.
1.58 million homes on the market.
Homes on the market.
December 95.
December of 2023, it was 870,000.
Lord have mercy.
So population grows,
Yeah.
the inventory's down, right?
Yeah.
So we have record high prices for that reason, because there's just not a lot of inventory to pick from. If you have one loaf of bread on the store shelf, well, guess what? Everybody who wants bread's going after that loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's why the median prices go up, and we see the pricing not really backing off in our market anyway. There might be pockets in the country that have struggled price wise, but in the Puget Sound area, we're still appreciating.
Yeah, I guess down south right now they're having a little bit of stagnation, but other than that, in the Northwest, we're still inventory is building, but we're still increasing our position equity wise. So it's still in the positive for sellers.
Yeah. And another interesting statistic, we hear a lot about interest rates right now, right? Interest rates, oh, they're so high. Oh, they're so high, right? So national average, if you took a snapshot, went all the way back to 1971. So we're going to do over 50-year snapshot of the United States interest rates. Guess what the average interest rate is over that 50-year period?
Oh, well, I would think it would be somewhere around 3%.
No,
Oh,
no,
really?
that would be wrong, sir. The average is 7.7%.
Right.
7.75%
And
is the average.
I keep telling people this is not the rates aren't bad. It's just a combination of the prices and what has been an average rate for us for decades.
Imagine trying to buy a house in 1981
Yeah.
and interest rates are almost 18%. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we have seen during COVID, because of the artificial stimulus that was going around, we did see interest rates drop to the
Yeah.
low threes and sometimes even the high twos, right? So it's trickling back up. It's right now, who knows what it is today? I wouldn't even give a number now because I don't know when somebody's
We're
maybe going to
touching
listen to this.
Touching the sixes,
Yeah.
but barely.
Yes. But just get some perspective on what it has been like. So this is not as doom and gloom. Yes, everybody lives in the payment, but there's hope on the horizon, So
Yeah,
we're
I
not
think
at
so.
18%. So income has continued to go up on average for most people. Last year, here's what's interesting. Actually, through February of this year, the average number of offers received on homes was a little over three offers per home.
Yeah.
So we're still kind of in a multiple offer situation overall, and speaking in general terms here. So this is probably not the time to come in ultra low on an offer price just because you saw them do that on one of the real estate TV shows.
Right.
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 So that's kind of what's going on
And
as
that
far
depends.
as offers.
Right. If
It
the house
depends.
has been on the market for 2 months, that's why you hire a real estate broker. House has been on the market for 2 months, and we do our analysis, and we determine that it's overpriced by $50,000.
Right.
Then we're going to make the suggestion to our clients, hey, this is overpriced. Let's take a stab and, try to have a conversation with a listing broker, get a feel. You'll be surprised at how much information you can get from somebody if you just ask an open-ended question.
And that's
right?
another reason why hiring a good real estate broker is worth a fortune.
And this is really negotiation. And I tell people this all the time. Negotiation doesn't look like a legal trial,
Right.
where you're trying to, gazinga, I gotcha.
Gotcha.
It's more about asking good questions.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so this is where your broker really makes your money for you is, being savvy enough to call that other broker and just ask a few questions and see what kind of answers you get.
Right.
Stuff
Yep.
like that. That's negotiation.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. Any more stats you want to share?
Just a couple more. Guess what percentage of all business is cash?
Oh,
Cash buyers.
There's an amazing amount of cash right now out there.
Yeah. Believe it or not, 28%
Isn't
of
that-
all the transactions were cash buyers. How about that?
That is amazing.
Yeah, so it's out there.
Yeah.
Foreclosures and short sales are at an all-time low. They're less than 2%. So when you hear people talking about the bubble,
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball. I put mine away in 2008. But we don't have the glut of inventory that we had back then, and we don't have the same financing dynamics. So the
Which were-
appreciation aspects are helping. Yeah.
That was financing.
Yeah.
If you didn't catch that, that was financing
That
back
was
in 2008.
financing, yeah.
The wind's blowing. You got a loan.
Yep. And I'll throw up an interesting stat here: U.S. population by age. Obviously, the silent generation are aging out, as are the boomers, and it's making way for the big bubble in the garden hose, which is the Gen X's, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and so they're going to drive most of the sales going forward as the boomers kind of age out. But that's where.
So they're coming up, and you better speak their language, right?
Yeah, you really should.
Yeah.
And like I said, 89% of all the buyers are using agents, and 89% of sellers chose an agent to represent them in selling their home. So there's plenty of business. If you're getting into this business and you want to be serious about it, there are plenty of things out there for you to be excited about. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home, find a good broker that you can trust and let them steer the ship for you, and you can get it done.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good note to end on, sir.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks
Right.
for doing this. This
Well,
was fun.
yeah.
Glad Carl stopped by.
Yeah, it was nice to see Carl, and it was just very impromptu. And we'll see you next. So it's July 2024. We'll see you in August for another Market Movers broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, right on.